Welcome to Could AI Be the Secret Weapon for Growth? A conversation that we at Techonomy are very pleased to be hosting in partnership with Accenture. I'm David Kirkpatrick of Techonomy. I'm here with an incredibly good group of experts in computing and artificial intelligence and where the future is leading. Let me quickly introduce them. David Kenny from IBM's Watson Group, which he heads, basically overseeing all of IBM's AI work, more or less. Missy Cummings, who heads the Duke Robotics Center, is that right? Which is really a big picture research center at Duke on robotics and automation. Brad Smith, who's the president of Microsoft and also their chief legal counsel and somebody who's doing all kinds of amazing work around legal issues, but also representing Microsoft's big picture views on multiple matters. Okay, I'll get to that in a minute. Paul Daugherty, who's the Chief Technology Officer of Accenture and who even wrote an article about AI in the Techonomy magazine. So maybe I'll start with you, Paul, if I could, since you did sort of make a good effort to define why AI matters so much in that article. So I know AI is a huge priority for you. Why is that the case, and how much do you think it could be the driver for growth?
Yeah, no, it's and AI is clearly in the air here in Davos. I think it's been a topic much talked about, and we did the report that you talked about, David, where we looked. The question we asked is what could the impact of AI be on economic growth? It was a simple question. Not many people had looked at it from that perspective. So we did some research with Frontier Economics and looked at the 12 major countries. 12 major economies in the world and looked at the nature of the economies, the breakdown of the industry sectors, and what impact we thought AI could have. And the conclusion was that we believed overall AI had the potential to double GDP growth and increase labor productivity by up to 40% when you looked across those economies. What that could mean in the U.S. is the U.S. was not quite a doubling, but it was a significant increase in GDP to an $8 trillion increase by over the next couple of decades, doubling in Germany and other economies. And the reason is that, on the one hand, we believe AI stands to make assets and machines that we have far more efficient and far more utilized, far more intelligent, and it also has the effect of making people more effective with the augmentation capabilities and abilities to supplement what people do, and that's generally the conclusion of the report. And so we're cautiously optimistic, I would say, about the prospects of AI to get growth, but it's not necessarily easy, and there's challenges that we have to work through to make sure that that world and the business benefits and societal benefits that go with it really come to fruition.
Okay, great. I should have said at the outset that we're taking questions on Twitter at hashtag AI for Good, and you can also comment on the Facebook Live comment section. Now, Brad, pick up on that. Give us the Microsoft point of view, because I know AI has been getting more and more central focus at Microsoft as well.
Well, yeah, it's a huge area of work for us. We have over 5,000 people now working in this space. And to pick up on it, first of all, I would broadly agree. I think when people ask, is AI going to contribute to growth, you can break it down into three parts. First, will it contribute to productivity growth? Absolutely. Productivity growth tends to translate into economic growth. It's a prerequisite for it. And then the great question is, what will it mean for job growth? But let's just talk about the productivity space for a moment. It makes machines smarter. It makes machines more useful tools for people. I think it's worth just pausing for a moment and just almost talking a little bit about, like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, please.
Because in our industry, we're great at throwing around terms and never actually explaining them to people. But what we're fundamentally talking about here is the ability of machines to see and listen, to recognize, to understand, and then to reason and decide. And, to make it concrete. Imagine you're driving today a car down a residential street in a neighborhood, and you see a ball go into the street. Well, now imagine that it's an autonomous vehicle. The car needs to be able to see the ball. It needs to recognize that is a ball. It then needs to understand what we as humans probably would all understand. If there is a ball going into the street, there may be a child who is about to follow. You need to understand that. You then need to reason and decide, does the machine cause the autonomous car to stop? And ultimately, that's what we're talking about here, the ability of computing-led devices to make decisions. And the one last thing that's interesting in all of this is think about what goes into that understanding. You know, there's a level of recognizing, the ability to recognize an image that's driven by a lot of machine learning, but the understanding requires even more machine learning. You know, lots of data analyzed by algorithms that basically enables one to conclude that humans have figured out that a ball into the street is probably going to mean a child's about to follow. So, but at the end of the day, you do have machines that are able to take work that is now performed less efficiently by machines, or in some cases by humans, and that is basically the definition of productivity growth.
Okay, and I want to get back to this question of jobs specifically in a minute. And to break up my introduction even further, I don't think I even said we're here at Davos, which is why we were able to assemble such an extraordinary group. And I noticed just recently, as just a few minutes ago, that there's a chart on the wall, a video image that's continually updated that shows the trending topics on Twitter coming out of Davos, and automation was the #1 trending topic on every continent related to discussions happening here in Davos, which I think is not surprising because the jobs issue is so tied to it, and the growth issue is great, but if we don't have jobs, we're going to have a more complicated discussion. So, David, IBM,
yeah.
When you look at it, do you see it as a growth driver in the aggregate?
We do see it as a growth driver, and I would say we have a specific focus on specialized AI. The digital wave largely economically favored distribution. You got big search engines and big networks, and they were choke points, and that worked. Here, I think you're training models, so the people with the data and the content and the cumulative knowledge can extend and augment that, which helps them grow and also creates new jobs for their firms. So when we do Watson in oncology, we do Watson in endocrinology, we do Watson in legal, we do Watson in finance, we do Watson in banking, we do Watson in retail. Each of these are specialized. They learn something about that field that allows them to be deployed pretty quickly, that allows them to be real expert systems, and those companies that have built cumulative knowledge are able to extend that knowledge. So this creates a lot more opportunity for a broader set of the population to participate in this wave than perhaps the first one, which ended up with a few companies driving a lot of the value because they created great distribution vehicles.
Yeah.
The content's going to count more this time.
Okay. Missy, I saved you till last because you're sort of the most independent thinker, I think, in a sense. You can say whatever you want here. Do you agree with everything you've heard so far? How optimistic are you that AI will be a driver for growth?
Generally, I'm very optimistic. I'm a futurist. I'm here to train the leaders of the future. And so we see that there's really endless possibilities. And in all the examples you heard today, and particularly in business, I think there's a lot of potential for AI to grow. I caveat that with we are certainly not doing enough at the education levels to train enough people. So in the United States, for example, there's a need for 500,000 IT specialists, and we're only putting out 50,000 a year. So this is a big gap in the kind of people who have the skill set. But even more so, one of the things that I think surprises a lot of people, AI seems to be a objective, machine-driven process, but I'm sure everyone here, particularly at Watson, would tell you that it's human-intensive capital that goes into setting up these algorithms, training these algorithms, tweaking these algorithms. AI needs a lot of care and feeding. It can't really exist on its own without human support. And I think that's one of the things that gets lost in the translation is AI is actually a lot more human-computer collaboration than people really realize. And we need an entirely new set of tools so that engineers can move more quickly through their jobs as AI engineers, but even executives who are trying to make decisions. And it's an area we call explainable AI. So, you know, as a researcher, one of the areas I'm working on is how to make AI more explainable to different levels of decision makers who need to understand, yes, this is what my AI tool is recommending, but really what are the limitations and where are the little gotchas that I should be thinking about?
Is that partly because in some instances you assume people are going to have to overrule the AI decision-making for other human reasons?
Absolutely. AI is very good at taking in data from the bottoms up, but the real value of human is bringing top-down knowledge-based judgment, intuition, recognizing that there are relationships that simply can't be captured. at a data-driven level. And so, again, I see there's a hype out there that there's a lot of job replacement with AI, but really in the future, I see a lot more collaborative environments. But the one problem with that is we really do not have nearly enough people that we're going to need in the future to meet that demand.
Okay. Brad, I wanted to go back to you because I did hear your boss, Satya Nadella, talk about AI very recently. And one of the interesting points he made, which is a big point, and not being an economist, I probably should be thinking more in these terms anyway, but what he was saying is we have focused too much on returns on capital in the recent period in human history. We need to be thinking more about the returns on labor, which would imply that we would get more labor that would be more productive, and not just macro GDP level productivity, but really the productivity out of an individual. Is that something you think we're going to be able to augment people enough so that there really are more net jobs that are truly productive?
I think that's sort of what you just heard. I mean, which I would agree with. I think one needs to think about precise, calculations of job creation versus job loss, but fundamentally, there are lots of jobs that will be added here. Our focus is sort of trying, as we say, to democratize AI so it can get into the hands of more developers in every business, really, in governments and the like. It can be connected with people in all of the different things that people are doing, and it should make them more productive. But I think the key point here is people will need new skills. And that's where we're falling short. We're either falling short, in the clear numbers that you just heard, which are absolutely, I think, incontrovertible. We keep adding these jobs that we're not filling, and then worrying that there's not enough jobs. And we should worry, but heck, let's fill the jobs that we're creating.
Yeah, but people are really worried about the truck drivers, the cashiers, and we have to take a sector of society that's fairly lacking in education and either give them something better to do or train them very aggressively to do a completely different kind of work, right?
Yes, but what I would say is I think it's helpful to sort of take the broad set of skills and maybe put them into three categories. There's digital skills that some people will rely on entirely for their jobs. That's part of what we're talking about here with IT specialists oftentimes, or that other people need to learn to continue to grow in their jobs. There are what I would call non-digital technical skills, which could simply be, more advanced, welding. I mean, what you see is, people are needing to grow their skill set. But there's also soft skills. And, just to give you a simple example, when I started working, I started working at first as a lawyer 30 years ago. You go into a law firm and there would be one secretary for every 2 lawyers. Today, you may see one secretary for every 10 lawyers. Why? Well, a lot of the work that the secretaries were doing has actually been taken over by computers in various ways. Lawyers are writing themselves. But ask yourself, do you need more soft skill expertise to support 10 people at a time than 2? I think you do.
Yeah.
It's called juggling in human relations.
Okay.
And so there's a lot more to this than simply like learning to code.
All right, Paul, you were going to say something.
Yeah, just to get back to the point I made earlier, but I'm cautiously optimistic. I think the thing we have to keep in mind is that the waves of change with the technology are hitting very fast, and the waves of automation, some of the professions are happening very fast. So I'm optimistic, as I said, and I think as we all agree on where we're headed overall with growth and with net jobs, with overall jobs being created. I think we do have pockets of populations, and it gets to what you were just saying, that are going to be very difficult to reskill in the right way. And that's something I think we need to spend more time on. So if a profession is automated, that's take truck drivers or some profession. I don't want to pick on any profession in any certain way, but will you be able to train them to code? What are the adjacent skills? I think there's more thought required by business leaders and government leaders and policy leaders and educators working together to understand how we're going to deal with some of those displacements. So I'm optimistic in the large numbers, but I think there's significant numbers that we have to look hard at. And I think one thing we haven't talked enough about is how we can use this technology, AI, new forms of learning, to teach better. So that people, because one of the attributes of employees in this new economy is going to be continual learning because we're going to continue to have machines that augment people more and more with different capabilities. That's great and fantastic because it allows us as humans to operate at a higher level and interface with machines in a more human way. But the needs of people are going to need to, and the skills we have as people and the way we work is going to need to continually evolve. And I think we can use technology in ways we haven't yet thought of to help with that process.
So use the technology to help prepare people to use the technology, in effect. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to give some examples on that. This is a visceral topic for me. I grew up in Michigan. Most of the kids in my public high school did not go to college. I was the first kid in my family to ever go. So most of the people I grew up with face this issue today, and they are scared. I think there's a lot of training we can do for their kids. So there are things we're doing. We're investing in something called PTech, Pathways to Technology. It's a 14-year school, so you kind of graduate with your first 2 years of community college to build tech skills. There's a lot of annotation. There's a lot of what we would call new-collar jobs that are needed to train these models. It doesn't all take PhDs from MIT to do this. There's a whole bunch of things to be done. I do think the other question is, how do you help the people who are in their 40s and 50s who are going to now see some changes? I do think there are ways that technology can help them learn new skills. I think there are ways that you can use automation to help. I also believe we're not so far away from having augmented reality in our glasses and earbuds in our ears that can help walk us through things, bring us new skills, train us on the job. So there's a lot of things we need to look at to help migrate people, but technology can absolutely help people do new jobs, and we need to use it for that purpose. And all of us who benefit from it need to take this as one of our missions.
Yeah. Did you have something you were going to say?
Yeah, I think we also forget that we're terrible about predicting what is going to happen in the future. Mm-hmm. And so the emergence of, for example, all these drone delivery programs and driverless cars are going to be coming hard and fast. We are going to create an entirely new field of robot maintainers. And I would submit to you that this is a huge need that we need to start working on now, because these machines break. We've all been there. My lab looks like a drone graveyard. These technologies have to be maintained. But I think what it means to be a maintainer of the future, what we might consider to be a blue-collar job in the future, will also be a blue-collar job then, but it will have a slight tech twist to it. And we need to be, we as educators and company heads need to be more sensitive to the fact that that is where we're going, and we need to start putting the building blocks in now so that we can get there in the future.
Can I add one point on that? I completely agree with that. We've talked a lot about tech skills. The one point I wanted to add to this is there's been a debate in some sessions here in Davos about do we need more STEM or do we need more arts as we look at how this evolves? And I don't think it's a binary. I think we need both. Exactly. And we've talked a lot about the tech skills and what we can do here, but we do need, if you think about what this means and how people can use technology more effectively, we need many, many more designers, effective designers who understand people and how they work, how to design these systems, not just the screens, but broadly how we're using this technology in the way that works well for humans. And I think as we look at that, I think there's great opportunities on the creative side, in the arts, to develop skills that play into that, as well as enhancing the tech skills that we'll need to fill those open positions we talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm. You know, you mentioned how frightened your high school classmates are, and fear really is sort of the popular mode in response to this question, although maybe luckily, you know, globalization has been focused on much more in the public debate in the U.S. recently, even though in fact automation is what's caused the manufacturing jobs to go away. But when people do focus on it, they focus on it with fear. Is there anything that could change that? Does it worry you that there is so much fear? What's your thoughts about the fear per se?
Well, I think you've got to actually evolve the narrative to the positive. There are other things people are afraid of that this is solving. People are also afraid of health. The fact that we could have Watson work with the Barrow Institute and find 5 new DNA strands that are related to ALS greatly increases our ability to solve ALS. The fact that we're able to far more correctly diagnose blood cancers are helping people get the right treatment now. So this reduces that fear on health. There are fears about the financial markets and meltdowns.
Your high school classmates don't know about all that stuff, though.
They care all about health, and they all lived through the mortgage crisis. So the fact that the banks can be more stable, I totally disagree with you. They feel it in their day-to-day life. We have to bring this to people. A stable banking system with less risk, because you can market to market every day.
Which is, again, the software, the AI capabilities making
with
it
humans.
possible.
The fact that you can find cures to cancer, the fact that you can find cures to ALS, the fact that you can finally get enough sensor data to know some solutions to carbon-free environments without having the economic disruption they're afraid of, I totally believe we need to address other fears that the AI solves. And it's a trade-off. And I think people can accept that.
And I think, in a sense, it comes down to two distinct questions, though, that people have. First, will this create a brighter future? And I would say, yes, it'll improve human health. You know, there's a whole host of examples one could cite. But then the second question people ask is, great, will there be a job for me when I get there?
Right.
And I think that's the concern that one hears about more. And, you know, that is sort of, I think, a reflection of three things. One is, well, what is the net job creation? That's one of the hardest things to predict with any kind of timeline. But then number two, and you really hit it, Missy, is like, it's harder to predict what the exact jobs are that are going to be created. It has always been that way. It started 200 years ago when people started moving from farms to cities in the first wave of the Industrial Revolution. But there will be many new jobs created. And we see some, and we'll learn about the others. But then there is a third piece. There will be jobs, and people will have to study. You know, we're all going to have to keep learning. And it means that I think, you know, in the public sector, governments are going to have to do more. I think those of us in the tech sector can create technology tools. For us, you know, acquiring LinkedIn is a big step in terms of how technology can help people learn and get connected with jobs. Ultimately, I think we all have an individual responsibility. It's really hard to learn if you're not prepared to study. So we all are going to have to study a little bit
Just
more.
stick on that one topic, though, of what the tech sector's response needs to be, because you think about this a lot. I know it's something that I'm impressed by. But the tech sector is getting more and more heat generally for a variety of issues. But do you think the tech sector in particular needs to step up and be more a visible proponent of the potentiality of these technologies rather than just a financial beneficiary?
I think we have a responsibility. I think we have a responsibility first to acknowledge that this coin has two sides to it. I think we have a responsibility to contribute solutions. I also think, frankly, we have a responsibility to be thoughtful, because there's a little bit of a danger that every company in the tech sector goes and does something interesting just so it has a good story to tell when it's on a panel like this. And so, you know, I think what we should ask is, look, what can we do that will really make a difference? Now, if you look at where the tech sector, in my view, is actually in aggregate contributing quite a lot, it is to the spreading of coding across the United States. I mean, interestingly, it is tech companies either acting separately or often collectively through groups like code.org and the like that is leading to getting more students to learn to code online, training teachers. So there's a lot that we can do, but we need to be thoughtful.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there is more that not just the tech community, but I think the people who are thinking about this need to get, I think, certain messages across. I think we've all talked about this a little bit. It's been talked about here a lot in Davos. The one feeling I think people have is that this is out of control. I think there's a feeling that by the name artificial intelligence, things happen, things are going to happen, and who will decide? And one of the messages that I think we need to get across is leaders are in control. We're in control. It's about the decisions we make on how we deploy technology. And I think we need better guidelines and better principles and better definitions of the choices we make and the impact we have. And so we've been talking about this idea of responsible AI. And I'd say there's 5 things we need to think about. We need to think about accountability. When should a machine decide on its own? When should a human be in the loop? That's a design decision at every step in a business or business process that leaders can choose and make. We shouldn't leave it to chance. Transparency, not for everything, and there's a big debate about explainability of AI. For some things, you need it explainable. You should decide when it does need to be and make sure you do it in the right way. It should be fair. You should make sure the data, to the extent possible, is non-discriminatory and enforcing the right behavior. Honesty, so that AI isn't being designed to cheat, and it's done in a human-centric way. That's just kind of a rough cut at it, but I think there's things that put this back in our control and put leaders in charge of where this goes, and then we can take the human approach to ease some of those concerns.
Well, I'm glad you used the word leaders, because as somebody who's been coming to Davos a long time, I have been worried, and I think a lot of people worry who come here knowing a lot about this stuff, that many of the leaders, both in business and government, who come here have not been focusing on this kind of thing enough to make the decisions at the societal and even the corporate level that need to be made. And I think Klaus Schwab came to believe that, and that's one reason he wrote the book, The Fourth Industrial Revolution, which came out last year and has now centered a lot of the forum's activities around really educating people about the gravity of this transition to a digital society. I still think that even this year, there's a lot of evidence that people don't take these issues seriously enough. Is that a worry that some of you share?
Well, I actually think that people are thinking hard, in all honesty. I mean, can people do better? I'm sure there always is an opportunity to do better. What strikes me, actually, is how quickly the conversation has moved to actually try to define some principles for what, ethical AI is. I loved your list. It's actually quite similar to a list of 6 principles that Satya Nadella published in Slate last year. And so, what you fundamentally see in almost any phenomenon involving new technology like this is that people first start with, okay, what are the principles? What does it mean to have ethical or responsible artificial intelligence? I'd take your list. I'd add something like protection of privacy to it and the like. And ultimately, a consensus will begin to emerge. And then you'll probably see 2 things happen. One is it will spread in a way that, frankly, will put more pressure on companies to act with a sense of responsibility. And then ultimately, we'll all find ourselves debating 5 years from now, government proposals that, in effect, try to take these principles and reflect them in some way in regulation or law. And we'll say, wait a second, don't go too fast, and let's all hopefully act responsibly. And then governments will say, yes, but if there are some people who are not prepared to be responsible, if this is truly as important as it may become, governments may need to act. I think we're way before that. Okay. But that's probably the next decade.
Either of you?
Listen, I think Missy was right. You can't predict the future, so I don't know that we can have precise policy. I'd be very worried about that having adverse effects.
Well, I even mean business leaders is really aggressively pursuing it in their organizations.
I think business. Every AI panel I've been on has been oversubscribed and packed. So I feel the business leaders here and elsewhere.
And there are a lot of them, I will say.
A lot of them, right? They want to know this. It's a hot topic. I think the smart ones are thinking through how do they protect their advantage. If they're going to train that model, how do they make sure it's theirs? Okay. How do they make sure they extend their competitive advantage versus having it disrupt them? And that's what they should do on behalf of their shareholders. And most of them are also really thinking about their employees in their communities. I actually find very thoughtful business leaders trying to sort through how they navigate this and are doing it actually in a thoughtful way.
I love to hear people believe in that. Yeah.
I'd like to say, I do think one theme that I think has really come out of this panel, which I love, is that everyone thinks education is really important. We need more people. And then are people taking it seriously all across Davos? We've heard, yes, training, need more people. And then yet I'm the only person on this panel who that is my daily job. And then I would put it back to everyone here at Davos, all these leaders. Yes, that's true. And I'm not saying you're giving it lip service, but what we need now is action, right?
Yeah,
we need to change our education paradigms, both at the primary and secondary level, but particularly at the college level. And how do we change that? It takes everyone here and all of these people here who sit on boards to push universities to change. Universities have computer science departments that are very insular for the most part. That's not enough. It needs to be infused. And the only way that universities change, which are very slow to change, are to have external agents like the people here at Davos come back to them and demand that change. But it's only when that happens will we actually, because what I do feeds what everyone else here does, and I can't change unless I have some the pull from the industry.
And I think there's 2 thoughts that come out of this that I think are important. One is the nature of education, basically the connection between engineering and the liberal arts. Is, to me, at the heart of what you're describing. Yep. And you're already seeing engineering education start to change. You're seeing liberal arts education start to change to bring these things together. That's a good thing. Yeah. And then I just say, we can predict certain aspects of the future. We can predict that this is going to be very important. We can predict that the public will demand that we be responsible. And we can predict that if we are not responsible, then people will feel that governments need to act. And therefore, we can say, we better all be responsible, as you all are.
Well,
as
that's why we formed the partnership. So
We have one question that came in from Facebook that is very pertinent, so I want to ask it. Should AI and automation somehow generate tax revenue, be taxed in effect, to fund the retraining itself, which is very pertinent to our discussion. What does anybody think about that?
Well, the question is, are taxes, the goal is right. Are taxes the most efficient way to get it done? That's what I don't know. Or does that just put the wrong intermediary? I would agree that the partnership between the tech companies and the universities is key. We're both learning from each other. I don't think it's even just in college. We're having universities retrain our own employees. Lifelong learning is going to be key here. It's going to change so quickly. I'd like to say we all have an obligation. We probably need to monitor the investment in retraining. I'm not sure tax is the right mechanism per se, but I think the goal is the right goal.
Well, I also want to say we can't even agree what artificial intelligence means across the board.
That's
so
for sure.
if we can't come to a common definition, and is it an algorithm? Is it a line in an algorithm? Is it a capability? So I think what that would mean would be so hard to determine that you could never structure a tax.
Okay, good. Can't structure a tax, but we still have to educate people. But I want to we've got to wrap, but I think probably it was 12 to 14 years ago that I first moderated a panel at Davos where automation was very much the theme and education was the intended response of the panelists. I just hope that this wave is finally cresting and that the societies are going to start getting this message, because it's not a new idea. Everybody on this panel agrees fervently that we've got to start changing the way we think. I do think what is new is what you two, and especially we're emphasizing, the conjunction with the liberal arts of engineering training as the way we have to go. It actually sounds less scary and more doable, so maybe that's where we should go. But I want to thank all four of you for taking time out of a very busy Davos to have what I think was a very lively conversation. So thank you on behalf of Techonomy and Accenture, and we'll be doing this again soon. Thanks a lot.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.